Welcome back, YouTube enthusiasts, auto DIY repair folks. I'm back with another repair video here on a different car, one I've never worked on before. This is my son's girlfriend's Pontiac G6 2008. I believe it has a 6-cylinder engine in it, and let's see, 83,000 miles on it, I believe, somewhere in there. And she was at inspection, the North Carolina State inspection, I don't know, a few months ago, and they said she needed brakes. Alright, so exactly what does that mean? It just so happens this particular automobile has disc all the way around, which makes it nice. I've gone ahead and pulled off all the tires, and I've looked, and actually the rear ones look like they're in good shape. You know, the majority of your braking force is always up front, about 70% of it, and those pads are looking a little worn. I could feel, if I pressed hard, if I did a fairly firm or hard stop, I could feel a little pulsation in the front. So I don't know about the rotors yet. I took my fingernail and ran my fingernail against the actual rotors. I didn't feel any scratches or scoring. I don't have one of those indicators, a run-out indicator. You know, I'm going to go ahead, I've got some calipers, and I'll measure the actual thickness of this and see if it's within spec. But I'm going to go ahead and start removing the pads. For right now, unless I change my mind, I'm just going to do the front brakes. So the first thing we do, this hose here that you might see, this black hose, I bought one of the quick jacks. I got the 7000 SLX model. It'll hold at 7,000 pounds. And it's got two positions. Right now I'm in the low position, which is nice. I can work on the brakes and, you know, sit on a small stool if I have to, and then I can raise it to a second higher location. I did discover something though. I worked on my son's 2008 Accord, and typically when you put it under the car, it'll move the car forward, say 11 to 12 inches roughly. On this particular car, if I put it so that it moved forward, the car had a tendency to tip. The center of gravity on this particular car, much like my Camry, had the same problem with my Camry a little while ago. It would have a tendency to tip a little, and so where the rear pad was, it'd be, you know, a couple inches off the pad, but on the front it was fine. So the guy says, number one, bleed the system, which I did again, and so there was no air in there. He says, turn it around. So I had two choices. I could either turn the actual jack around, or I could back the car in. Well, since I had the car in forward already, I just went ahead and turned the jack around. So now I have it in at first position. So let's get up under here and go ahead and take this caliper off on this side. And I do have, let's see, these caliper bolts are, let me check this out, 14 millimeter. So let me climb up under here and undo this particular caliper. Now, also, right here, make my screen, make sure you can see it so I don't get in the way. There we go. Where my finger is pointing, let's see if I can zoom in. Right here, this particular style is like the Honda, my 2008 Honda, or my son's. There's a boss right here that keeps this piece in place right here. And so when you undo the bolt, this doesn't move because of the boss on the actual caliper. Some have a nut here and a bolt here, and you have to have two different wrenches. Well, in this case, this particular mechanism here is like a fancy nut. It keeps it in place. So let's see if I can get up under here. Pardon me if you hear me grunting, because it is still a little bit on the ground. And there's two bolts. There's one way down here that you can't see because the light's on the top, and then there's the one up here. So I'm going to do this one first. Now, excuse me. Alright, so loosen that one up. At this point you don't have to do this, but you may want to take the cap off your reservoir. I'll do that in a minute. Especially when you push this piston back in, and I could see these pistons are fairly extended, which also told me there was a lot of wear. We'll pull these pads and look at them. But I'll pop the top, so to speak. I'll pull that lid off, and that way, when you push the pistons in, that fluid's going to back up. Then I'll put some rags around it to make sure it doesn't overflow. Now, what I like about this particular wrench here, this is like a Stanley that I got at Walmart. You get in those spots where you need a little more leverage. That's one of the handiest little wrenches. Little ratchet, 3/8 inch. I love it. Don't have to look for that cheater bar. Sometimes you go look for the cheater bar and you go, oh gosh, I don't have one. I need so and so. Well, it's got its own cheater bar built in. And these are not on very tight anyway. They're usually something like 22 foot-pounds, I believe. All right, let's go ahead and take this off. Now I do have a bungee cord here to hang things up. And we'll tilt this up a little bit here. And again, there's another bolt up under here. You can't miss it. Actually, 4 bolts, 2 for the caliper and 2 for the bracket. All right, there's one. Need to get my magnetic tray. And here's 2. Okay, let's pull this off gently. Now be careful, you've got your brake hose here, and we're going to hang it up so that it doesn't strain the hose. Now that piston's out quite far. I don't see anything that looks like a leak, but I'm examining it. It's dirty. Alright, so now I'm going to hook it with a bungee cord and whatever you got, a wire, bungee cord. Actually, I'm going to do it this way. Okay. There we go. And then we'll move it out of the way. Hook it to that outer tie rod end, I think would be good. Or inner. Alright, now move this stuff out of the way. Step on it. Let's take a look at some pads here. This is the outer. This again is the driver's side of the car. Oh man, pardon the knees. Alright, let me find something so we can focus here. Give me just a second. So again, this is the outboard. And hey, they still have a little life in them. Alright, let's see what the inboard looks like. Now you know you don't take your compressed air and blow all this dust off. You really should use some kind of a brake clean. Now, here's the inboard. Still a little bit of meat. Not terrible. Let's try that. Let me try this with some more light though. I'm not sure how well you can see that with my light down there. Let's do it this way. Alright, so again, here's the inboard. And how do you know it's inboard? It's got the wear indicator right here. See a little tang? When it gets to a certain point of metal on metal, what will happen is you'll start to hear it. And again, we probably 1/8 of an inch left. So let's see, grab that outboard again. Okay. I think I'm going to measure some millimeters just to see what's left. Be right back. Alright, so measuring those pads, I had about 4 millimeters of material left. I'm going to go over to the other side and pull those pads, and I'm not going to show that on video because it's the same thing, and we'll just take a look-see and see what the thickness is there. So those wore fairly evenly. I just did my son's car, like I said, at 2008, and it had worn unevenly because one of the pistons had seized, and so the inboard was at least 2/3 smaller than the outboard. But let's also check the health of the pins. Let's just see if that, yeah, that could use a little work there. That should spring out. It's okay, but it could use a little help. Yeah. So then I'm going to check. Uh-oh, that boot. I'm going to check the health of the boots too. And I will replace this hardware. So this bracket's going to come off because I'm going to clean everything up. Tell you what, let's go ahead and do that now before I get to the other side. Okay, so here we are under the car, and we're looking from front to rear, and again I'm on the driver's side. So here was the lower caliper bolt, here was the upper, then here is the lower bracket bolt, and here is the upper. Let's see if I get from the top so you can see. There we go. That's the upper. That's a 15 millimeter nut. So I'm going to go ahead and take that off, and we'll check the health of that too. Okay, so here is the bracket. This is the way it would fit, and here are your caliper pins. Here and here, that's where the bracket bolts go. I will be removing this hardware and cleaning those surfaces and getting new pads. Like I said, that moves okay, but I still don't want to take it apart. I think I'm going to go ahead and get the hardware kit and change these boots. I'll check them very carefully, but just because I'm here, I may go ahead and change those boots. As I was describing earlier, see the design? You have two flat sides, and when you put this back together, the caliper fits in there, and when the bolt goes through, those bosses keep things from moving, so you don't need that second wrench. But that again has a flat side to it. Rather convenient design. Okay, so I've done a preliminary check of everything. There's a lot of beef on those pads on the rear. I'm just going to leave them as is. On the front here, so again on the driver's side, the pad, the material that was left on this driver's side front was 4 millimeters. On the passenger side front, 3 millimeters. Alright, so you know those guys that told her, whoever told her she needed new brakes, yeah, we're getting there. I went ahead and measured all 4 rotors. I did not measure the pads in the rear because I've not taken them off. There's still quite a bit of material in there, at least 8 to 10 millimeters. So I measured my rotors and my calipers, and the driver's side front is 26.3 millimeters. Passenger side front 26.4. I don't know if that's within spec or not. Depending on the make of the vehicle, some of these things cannot be turned. You just buy new ones. My wife's Kia, as I've said in previous videos, my wife's Kia, you can't turn them. You just go ahead and replace them. I don't know, because I felt a little bit of a pulsation, again I don't have a run-out indicator, I may just elect to go ahead and replace these. Actually they look kind of original because down here is a little wire nut kind of thing, and that usually comes from the factory to keep the rotors in place. They're generally free floating. So these very well could, I don't know, they might be original, but I'm not sure. I just have a tendency to go ahead and replace these things. I don't like to, you know, do things half-baked. Alright, so back to what I was saying. So the rotor on this driver's side front, 26.3, on the passenger front, 26.4. Now on the rear, those rotors are smaller. Again, you know, 70% of your braking's up front. On the rear rotor, 14.4 on both sides, driver and passenger. Again, I'm going to consult with some folks, mechanics online, and get the specs. But I don't know, for the cost of things, I may just go ahead and replace these rotors to make absolutely sure. So I'll be back. So once again, back at the brakes. Here's the little pin I was describing right here that they put on the assembly line to keep the rotor in place. Most mechanics at this point will tear them off, but I think I'll reuse it. And what you do is you take a screwdriver and punch it counterclockwise, just tap it, and it'll come off. It follows the threads. I've already done the calipers on the passenger side. I'm going to go ahead and take this off, and then I'll show you how I clean the calipers. So again, I've got the new rotors. I'll go ahead and put the new rotor on that passenger side and get it ready. Because these rotors, now they have this coated style, and you don't really need to do this, but I've got the standard style. They usually have some kind of a chemical composition on there. I think it used to be called cosmoline, if that's what they still use. Anti-rust compound, so when it sits on the shelf it doesn't rust. I'll take and brake clean both sides since they're new, and then put those on, then put the bracket and the caliper on. Now let's work on these calipers. I've already done one. Don't tell my wife I'm doing this on the kitchen counter, or I'm a dead man. I'll make sure I clean it up when I'm done. So, you know, I took the hardware out from in here, these pieces, and wish I had a parts cleaner. That would be nice, but you know, you don't want to inhale this dust. So took those off. I have a nice little Dremel tool with a little rotary style grinding wheel, little stainless steel thing, and I cleaned all these areas up. A little closer. All these areas here, you can use a file or a wire brush, but I cleaned up all these areas where the hardware will reside. Let me get a good picture. You see it's nice and shiny. Now I'm going to work on the pins, and depending on the model, some of these pins, and we'll take this one, we'll just make a good guess. One has a band around the end. Glad I did get that kit with the boots, because this one is torn. Ah, there we go. This one happens to have a pin, so don't forget a band on the pin. Don't forget your placement. I don't know what difference it makes. I'm sure there is something. I'll just have to research it. But you can see the band up here at the end. So I'm going to go brake clean this. I'm going to brake clean the boot chamber, put a new boot on. And I have to get way down in there and clean all that gunk out. And then I'll come back and use my Permatex Ceramic Extreme Brake Parts Lubricant, the purple stuff. So I'll be back. I'm going to go outside. Don't think you need to see me just cleaning this little particular piece. Pin's nice and clean. Chamber's nice and clean. I'm going to use a little bit of my ceramic mixture here, made by Permatex. I'm going to just put a good coating on it. You don't want to clog things up. You just want a good coating. And before I put the boot on, I'm going to put the pin in and get it lubricated gently, since that's been cleaned out. Might be a little resistant. Okay. Get some of the lube on the walls of the chamber. There we go. And there's a bit of a suction to it too. Alright. A little bit more. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the boot on. And if you'll notice, this part right here is deeper. That's going to go into the chamber, and there's a bit of a groove there. So that's going to go down. Fits in the groove. Pin. And I lost some of the lubricant on the paper towel there. Okay, the end. groove. Slide the pin in. Okay, and it also has a little bit of a groove up at the top here, and you want to make sure that that part of the boot slips over. Give it a few twists, in and out, in and out. You're going to squeeze some of the air out. You may have to pull the lip of the boot down and press the pin in to get some of the air out. Okay, and that moves smoothly. There we go. Alright, I'm going to go outside and do the other pin, come back, and then do the hardware. Alright, let's work on this last pin. Made sure that I cleaned all the grooves. That one went in a little bit easier. Alright, let's put the boot on. Just a little more juice there. Make sure you get the end of it too. Push it in very gently. Don't force anything. Okay. And make sure that the boot is secure into the groove at the top. Make sure there's no residual air in there. I'll pull that boot down a little, push it in. There we go. And that moves pretty freely. Now you're going to have to remember, when you put this back together, it has the two flat sides here. Get it, two flat sides. One of those will have to rest against what they call the boss. When you put the caliper back on, the caliper will have to rest in there. It's a nice flat spot. That way you don't need a second wrench when you put the bolt in. Okay, now let's do the hardware. So, the spring-loaded stuff here. It's a little bent there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and lubricate these areas here too, where this hardware will rest. Anything that might move and create problems with noise. And again, it's a thin layer. You don't have to have a bunch on there. If you put too much on there, it does nothing but attract the brake dust and the dirt and moisture and everything else. So I'm going to just very carefully put some of that on there. Maybe a tad more. Also helped that I brought my grease in and warmed it up before I started doing this morning. Like I say, about 40-something degrees. I was hoping for a warmer day. It was 60 earlier in the week. Alright, so that's there, that's there. Okay, so I've gotten it all on all the points. I'm going to now take, and you can't really mess it up, these little grooves here go right here, and you press it down and press it down. It'll fit. Okay. I'm also going to put a little bit of lube inside there, and I'll do so on the ears of the pans, where those ears move. Again, not a lot, just enough to get those areas slick so you don't get the squealing. Alright, so right in here, that's where the ears will go. Alright, let's do the other side. A little bit of grease. A little bit of grease. See if I can do it left-handed. Brace there. Wherever it's going to rest. Down here, down there. Alright, let's put the hardware on. Again, oops, I don't need that piece. Again, you'll see the grooves here, and it will go like this. Fits rather nicely. This is pretty good hardware. Usually stainless steel is your best bet. Less chance of rusting. Okay, let's do a little bit there, a little bit there. Smooth it out with my finger. Okay. So I think that one's ready to go. Let me go set up and remove the rotor on the driver's side. So here's that, again, a little closer view. Here's that little wire nut, I guess, that I was talking about. If you just take a screwdriver and work your way off, you may have to, it's on there pretty tight from the factory, I guess. Just kind of work your way around, and it'll unscrew. There we go. Just kind of work screwdriver around. You can try and put them back on, but I don't think it's worth it. Now, you notice too, see the color, the green color on the bolt? There was no real rust on any of these bolts. The bracket bolts also had that green color, and what it reminds me of, and it may very well be, if you've ever seen airplane parts and you see that lime green color like this, that's usually a zinc chromate to prevent corrosion. So it makes me wonder, did they use zinc chromate on this, which I think really is a pretty good idea. So I'm going to remove those and then remove the rotors, one here and one up under here. Down here. I'll take those off. I'll be back. Okay, so the next thing I want to do, I have removed the old rotor, removed it. As a matter of fact, I measured with my calipers. If I'm not mistaken, the thickness of the old rotors were like 14 millimeters. These new ones are 26, so they are beefier. I think I got Rebestus and the thermoquiet pads. But I went ahead and took a wire brush, and cleaned up my nuts here, where I'm going to put the lug nuts. And I put some fluid film around here and a little bit on here so that things don't stick. Prevents corrosion. I'm going to put this on. I went ahead and cleaned this off with my brake cleaner. Can't have too much brake cleaner. So that's nice and clean. Put the rotor on. And what I'll do next is I'm going to put the bracket on, and then I'll do the pads. So let me get my bracket, my bolts, and put that back on. Struggle a little bit. I don't think you really need to see that on the camera. So the bracket's back on. Let's tilt that down a little bit more. Bracket's back on. I did some fluid film on those bracket bolts too. Remember, those are the 15 millimeter. And attached the bracket. 96 foot-pounds. Wow. The caliper bolts, once I get those back on, are 26. So bracket bolts 96, 26 for the actual caliper bolts. Now, oh, don't forget to clean, use some brake clean and clean the piston area up under here too. Get all that dust away from there. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take the old brake pad, and let's see if you can see that. You can see the, if you can see the piston here, me zoom in a little bit more. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take the lid off of brake fluid, and I'm going to push the piston back using a C-clamp and one of the old brake pads. So I've got the old brake pad, and I'm going to put it in here against that piston. Again, let me move the camera for a better reference. Here we go. So here's your piston, and what I'm going to do is I have to push it back in, because once I put the pads in here, that piston needs to be fully retracted. I'm going to put the pads in a minute, but I'm going to show you again, like I say, take the top off of the fluid reservoir for the brake fluid and put some rags around it, because brake fluid will eat up paint in a heartbeat. I'm going to put the old pad on here and put a C-clamp on the back side and on the front side, and very slowly push each piston back in. Alright, so the pad is wedged in there, and I'm going to slowly turn. So you want to, you'll feel it. Just give it a chance. You'll see the pistons start to retract. Watch fluid level. There are tools for this, loaner tools, but this works just as well. And this is what I have. Make sure you don't pinch the boot. And that should be pretty good. One thing I did show you, there was a little bit of air here. The boot had bubbled up. So in order to get that out, I just peeled it back a little bit and let the air escape. So I just pushed it out. But you see how it's nice and even now? So just do that and let some of that air out. Alright, let me show you the inboard pad here. Now, there is the wear indicator or the wear sensor. In this case, it was not riveted to the pad. It came as a separate piece in the bag of parts. So, you know, these pads can be used for multiple vehicles. So I had to clip it on. That's on the inboard and lower side. I just mimicked what came off from the original. And these thermoquiets, these Wagner thermoquiets, do not use shims. So here's the inboard, the old one. Here's the shim. And that was on the lower side, inboard. And so here, same deal. I just clipped it on. Now I put a little bit of the grease here, a little bit of the grease here, and a little bit here where the piston's going to hit. And I'm going to slide that into the groove. So here's the outboard pad. Again, I lubed it up here and the wings. Push them together. I'm going to go to the other side and take that piston and push it back in, then come back over here and put the caliper on. Well, here's what I was talking about. See how it's bulged out a little bit? So I'm going to peel it back a little. See if I can get that bubble out of there. It should shrink right down. You might have to play with it a little bit. I'm going to do this two-handed. I'll be back again. So I'd take my pick and very slowly work my way around here. See how it flattened out? Now make sure you don't turn your pick and puncture the actual boot. Turn it toward the metal and just slowly slide it around. And so it's compressed. I'm going to push it in a little bit further though. Let's get up close and personal. Now, I put the calipers back on. They slid on very easily. Just remember that that flat part has to go inside that boss right there, and that's what keeps it in place so you don't have to use a second wrench. And I'll torque these to 26 foot-pounds in a minute. Make sure your hose is in the right position. Don't forget to take out whatever you use to suspend the actual caliper. And I don't need to bleed the brakes at all. Pads are in the right position. While you're under here, you can always check your boots on your differential, your rack and pinion, oil leaks, etc., etc. So I'm going to tighten those up and do the other side, and I should be just about done. Everything's looking pretty good so far. Boots look good. That's in the proper perspective. This is on, torqued to 26 foot-pounds. I also put some fluid film on the bolts. The hose looks good. Now I'm going to crawl underneath. Don't mean to make anybody dizzy, but bear with me here. We're going to shine the light up here. Look at the back side of things. Yeah, again, everything's torqued. 96 on the bracket bolts, 26 on the caliper. Don't see any leaks. Alright, hose is in its proper position. Alright, I'm gonna go check the other side, and then we should be just about finished. Alright, things look pretty good here. Everything's tightened. Again, don't forget to remove whatever bungee cord that you had to keep things in place. Things look pretty good there. No drips, no kinks. And you've got to remember too, when you finish this up, you're going to have to get in the car, crank it up, pump the pedal a few times to make sure that the pistons seat. You don't want to go driving down the road without doing that first. So the system has to acclimate itself. So I'm going to do that next. Well, I think we're done. Excuse me. I went ahead and pumped the brakes a few times with the engine running, and then cut it off, pumped it a few more times, and it is rock solid. So I know that there are no leaks or air bubbles anywhere. I have to put the tires back on. I also checked the TPMS. My son's girlfriend, this is her car, said the TPMS light came on. I don't know if that's because there's a low tire pressure, and you know, always check your spare. That's what happened to one of my cars. The TPMS light came on. It was actually the spare. Not sure if this car has a full-size spare or maybe the space saver, but I'm going to check them all. If not, then it's probably the TPMS unit, because those batteries are good for like 7 to 10 years. Again, this is a 2008, and so we're right about in that area where it costs you to have it taken and redone. They don't replace the batteries; they replace the whole unit. I need to go in the house, clean up my mess on the kitchen counter, wipe it down with some Clorox. Please don't rat on me. Don't tell my wife. She never watches my videos anyway. So I hope this helps you. Maybe save a little money. Please add comments if there's something that you'd like to see, or maybe I missed. Add a comment. I just ask that people don't be ugly and nasty. I've had to take one person and block them permanently because they really got foul mouth. Totally unnecessary. I mean, I can accept constructive criticism. Do the like, dislike, whatever, but I appreciate you watching my videos, and just remember my mantra: I'll fix your car, but it won't go far. Bye. You guys almost let me forget. I need to add some dramatic music. Dum dum dum. The parts. Alright, so the rotors and the pads came from Rock Auto. The little kit that had the rubber boots in it and the hardware, I'm sorry, just the rubber boots. The hardware came with the pad kit, but the little boots that I changed out, that came from Napa. So in my case, again, 2008 G6 Pontiac with the 4-cylinder engine. These were the front brakes. Raybestos 580184R brake rotors, not coated, standard. Looks like maybe they were manufactured in October 17. The Wagner thermoquiets, and that's basically all I use. The thermoquiets, QC, like quality control, 1160. Between this and Rock Auto and shipping here to North Carolina, came from 2 different warehouses. Everything was 95 bucks. If you look at these particular Wagners and on Advance Auto, which I use a lot of the coupon codes, they were $69, 25 at Rock Auto, 9 bucks to ship it. So, you know, you say $35, still half price. Now, I can use these coupon codes. Sometimes the shipping cost outweighs, you know, the savings. And if you just look up Advance Auto and then scan or Google for some of the codes, you can save anywhere from 20 to 30%. Even with that savings, I still did better with Rock Auto. The Napa boots, this kit, bushing kit, 83417. That was 4 boots, you know, 2 for each side. All right, again, maybe I should get me some intro music and do like Eric O when he pulls out the brake clean. He uses a lot of brake clean. If you look very carefully up on the shelf in some of his videos, he's got a case of it. He uses brake clean on everything. And he brings it out and goes, da-da-dum. Again, maybe I need some theme music here. All right, well, here it is, chilly North Carolina, January of 2018. I had a little fun doing this. Dirty, but I had a little fun. And I hope this helps you. Once again, I'll fix your car, but it won't go far.